Ivory. Let's get started here. Um, Welcome to LeezFeed and our less than ostentatious studios of Tamala Sar Productions here. And I'm not going to tell you where I am. Okay. Tonight, we're going to be discussing the Illinois State Black Chamber. I'm your host, Lee Coleman. Again, this is LeezFeed, our podcast that covers so many topics, with so many famous people, some infamous people. So today we're going to be talking to Mr. Larry Ivory. He's the president and founder of the Illinois State Black Chamber and the chairman of the board of the National Black Chamber. And we're going to have a little long discussion that I think is necessary for Black businesses and Black people of all walks of life here in Illinois. So, Mr. Ivory, introduce yourself to the audience.
Lee, it's my pleasure to be on LeezFeed. And I'm the president and CEO of the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce and also the chairman of the board of the National Black Chamber of Commerce, the largest Black trade organization in the United States of America. We're in 24 different countries. We've had incredible leadership like the late Dr. Arthur Fletcher, who was the father of affirmative action, who played for the first NFL football player to play for the Baltimore Colts, won the Purple Heart under Patton's Army, and was the Assistant Secretary of Labor, but also obviously wrote affirmative action and coined the phrase as the executive director and the leader of the National Negro,
College Fund, Negro College Fund.
Negro College Fund. He coined the phrase, "The mind is a terrible thing to wear." So we are an advocacy organization driven by commerce, going back to the earlier days of Booker T. Washington, who founded the first chamber, and everybody else is after him. So we are an organization focused on Black economic empowerment to strengthening Black businesses, Lee.
Okay, would you call that the mission of the Illinois State Black Chamber?
The mission is to economically empower and sustain the African-American community to entrepreneurship and capitalistic activities via interaction with our national organization out of Washington, D.C., and throughout the Black diaspora. In essence, we're just here to strengthen Black businesses. We believe that we strengthen Black businesses, Lee, we strengthen Black communities, and we strengthen Black people, and we believe we strengthen America at the same time.
Okay, give us a little history of the Illinois State Black Chamber. You founded it. I'm a little bit confused. Are you officially called the Illinois State Black Chamber or the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce? Which one?
Well, actually, we're officially called the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce, but we use the name the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce because it was a little bit of redundancy. There is another organization that calls himself the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce.
We'll get into that later. We'll get into that later. I just want you to talk about the Illinois State Black Chamber, which you are the founder and the president and CEO. And you came out of the rib of Harry Alford, the president of the National Black Chamber. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, Lee, it was my pleasure. Matter of fact, it was a gentleman by the name of Floyd Barlow who got me involved, and me and him and others formed the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce. Our mandate at that point in time was given to me. The edict was to Larry to take Illinois and go out and ink other Black chambers of commerce throughout the state of Illinois so that we would have a strong footprint in Illinois. And so we inked chambers and throughout the whole state of Illinois, as far south as East St. Louis. And we're proud to say that, Lee, you're the president of the St. Clair Black Chamber of Commerce, and we're glad to have you as one of our leaders, not just only from the St. Clair and being president and CEO, but also you serve as our Southern Regional VP for the Southern District with our chamber. We also have the Central and Northern District VPs also. But our whole piece, as you said, the genesis of our organization was to go out and ink chambers and then to strengthen Black businesses by making sure that we had footprint in those areas, because it's hard to think that you can have relevancy in places where you don't have any presence. So our piece is to find talented people, put them in the road, teach them the ropes, and make sure that we're focused on Black economic empowerment. We didn't say women, we didn't say Hispanics. This is a Black business organization focused on Black business. And so our goal is simply to change policies and to do things that I think gets us to a point where we can have greater economic reciprocity. Because as you know, Lee, when it comes to the net worth of Black people compared to white people, those numbers are way out of line. And the only way to really change that sometime is to do that through business growth and development.
Okay, that's how you build wealth. Uh,
Yeah.
Larry, I've been knowing you for about like maybe 20 years or more, and you made a great sacrifice to deal with the chamber. Let's talk about what you were doing and some of your resume material before you became involved in the chamber. What were you doing?
Well, I was vice president of one of the biggest investment banking companies at that point in time before they had the big collapse in the marketplace. I worked for Merrill Lynch, and then I went on to take a role at Solomon Smith Barney, which was a holding of Citibank at that point in time. So I was vice president of investments, and my goal, what I did, I helped my clients invest in the stock market, did financial planning, and help them to create wealth. And unfortunately, not fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of my clients, I'd say 90% of my clients were Caucasian people, because that's where most of the wealth was concentrated. But I saw the light, Lee, and I decided that that wasn't good enough for me, that I was not okay with seeing the wealth that was being created and the wealth that people had, but I didn't see that concentrated in the hands of enough Black people. And so I made the decision that I was going to leave corporate America. And I also, and let me just mention this, even before I left there, I was the general partner of the African Opportunity Fund, which was a hedge fund that invested in the Black diaspora. And I was one of the lead partners in that firm at the same time as I was making sure. But I left all that because I needed to focus on the chamber. And so, we have to make tough decisions. On the financial side, it was probably pretty risky. And sometimes people might have said that he had lost his mind, because when you're making a six-figure income and then you take a haircut and you take an 85% haircut in pay,
No,
you
balling.
really got to believe it. You really got to believe. Yeah, you got to believe in what you're doing. And
Just kidding.
yeah. So hey, I left it, man, and I haven't looked back, Lee. There's nothing more rewarding, in my opinion, than helping Black people win contracts and fighting against the outright discrimination and the disparity that exists within the American system. And I'm proud that I get a chance to do that.
Okay, this is a unique situation for me because, we're supposed to be, so-called journalists. You're supposed to give the straight, truth, speak to power, unvarnished, and not having any, prejudice towards interviewee one way or the other. But I have to say that I witnessed you do what you just said. I watched your sacrifice, and I got encouraged to get involved because of you, because I believed in you and your mission and the chamber's mission. So I have to say that I did witness the hardships and the sacrifice that you made to become the chamber's leader. And I followed you, and I'm a leader myself, but I can follow a good leader. Good leaders can follow a good leader. Now, let me ask you a question. I heard a lot of talk about the Illinois State Black Chamber, that they are a Republican organization. How do you handle that? I know you've heard it, we've talked about it, and you get criticized from Democrats in government and Democrats in the community that you are, this organization from the national to the state is a Republican-based organization. What do you say to that?
Well, I say that when you want to undermine and silence a voice, you got to attack the credibility in order to justify that. So I think anytime you have people who speak truth to power, that people want to label them. and I make it clear that we have both Republicans and Democrats who are part of our organization. We are not partisan, we are bipartisan, and we simply focus on policies. If the policy coming from Democrats is good, we'll be supportive. If the policy coming from the Democrats are bad, we're going to be against it. The same thing true with Republicans. So, in essence, Lee, it's good for people when they want to minimize you, for people to try to kind of, create a narrative that's simply not true. When you take a look at our political pack, I tell people, look at our political pack that we had, and 99% of our money went to Democrats. So if anything, people would say, well, that can't be true then if you are a Republican. But we have the philosophy, and I think where it comes from is that, we worked with Robert Gorovich, we worked with Quinn, we worked with, and we worked with Rauner. And we worked with Rauner because, obviously he's a sitting governor. My goal and objective is to help Black businesses. Whatever governor's in office is a governor we have to work with. And it doesn't mean just because you're Republican that we can't work with you. It don't mean just because you're a Democrat we can't work with you. We work with everybody in order to help Black businesses and help Black people. It's real simple. And those are the facts.
Good, yeah, you work with people who have a vested interest in your interest. And one of the things that I like about, like I said, we had Democratic and Republican governors during my lifetime, and I've seen some good things from both parties. I've seen, so like you said, we're for whomever is with us and for us, and that's nothing wrong with that. I know that
we're against those who are against us.
Absolutely, and we got to be a little tougher against those who are against us. We got to call them out. The price for an LLC used to be about $500, and to renew it, it was about $250. Now it's down to $175 and $75 to renew on a rounder. And let's talk about the shelter market on a rounder. No matter what your political affiliation is, if you help us, you do something to help business, we're going to be there and we're going to support you, Democrat or Republican. So I thought there was some good things. The shelter market, Larry, could you explain that? That came on a rounder, and it's not being enforced not even today, even on a Democratic governor, to the extent that it should be.
Yeah. Well, the sheltered market, Lee, was one of those procurement laws that were that's in the procurement purchase law, and it's the law. And we got Governor Rauner to do an executive order supporting the sheltered market, which no other governor had done, but he did it. And he made an executive order, and he said some things that resonated with our business people, that he said in a public meeting that, hey, look, the fact of the matter, we got a 20% goal. But when we take a look at how well Blacks are doing, those numbers are 2% and 3%. We can do better than that. Well, anytime you say that to business people, that you're honestly having a conversation that most people would avoid, he's talking about it. And more importantly, he believes that it could be better. And that, but there was a lot of, when you're talking about politics, sometimes getting a person in office and when your opponent winning is dirty. It could be pretty dirty. It could be very adversarial. So people really, quite frankly, didn't like, in spite of some of the good things he did. Not everything he did wasn't good, but everything he did wasn't bad either at the same time. And the things that we could support him on, we supported him on. And the sheltered market was one. And what the sheltered market said was this, Lee. It is one of the most important pieces of procurement law that exists. It says that the council shall meet, the BEP council, which is a business enterprise program, who basically has, under the statute, has the responsibility of helping to improve minority participation, which includes women and other minority, Hispanics, Asians, and everybody else, and people with disability. Now, that's what the BEP council represents in terms of the goals. And what it says that at every council meeting, we shall hear, and time should be set aside to take a look at any discrimination that exists in the procurement process, whether it be under engineers, whether it be under IT, whether it be under advertising. It says, if you find discrimination, This is what the law is. If you find discrimination, it says you shall establish a sheltered market to correct the discrimination. It didn't say you may, you want to consider, it says you shall. Now in English, shall means pretty much that you will do it. It ain't optional.
Okay, so what did it do when it said um, uh, put a sheltered market into place? What does that mean exactly?
What it means, Lee, is that you can then, when you're doing, say, for IT, the first shelter market that was done was in IT. It means that when you bid on a contract, you're not bidding against white boys who have major multi-billion-dollar companies. They cannot participate in the contract. So if there's a $10 million contract and it's a sheltered market, that means that a Caucasian firm cannot participate in that procurement, that you can only compete against BEP companies in order to win the contract.
Protective classes under the broad um, um, classes in the BEP program, which is minorities and women, basically. And
right.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
And what it is, it simply just gives us a legitimate right to create fairness. The law was written so that there would be fairness and equity, and that there would be adequate participation. But there's an enormous amount of resistance when it comes to doing the right thing sometimes. Black people don't mind.
How are we faring now under the Democratic governor?
Well, under the sheltered market, we haven't done anything, quite frankly. There has been, I think, one or two potential sheltered markets that come out. It's still in the process on IT that's done by DoIT. But quite frankly, we haven't moved. I mean, this governor has been in the office for a couple of years now, and we haven't seen significant movement in reference to the sheltered market, quite frankly.
Who discovered that a sheltered market should be created? What body meets to this, to ascertain whether or not a particular procurement should be under the sheltered market?
The only group that can declare a sheltered market under the statute is the BEP Council that I serve on. Mm-hmm. And the BEP Council can declare a sheltered market after hearing information and finding that there's discrimination. We then declare it. Then once we declare it, then it's up to the agencies and others then to move things into the sheltered market to correct the discrimination. But at the end of the day, I think the governor has a lot of sway because the people work for him. If they're not moving it, he can surely make a phone call, just like you run your house, Lee, right?
I don't know about that.
Yeah, well, you run your house and your wife run your house. The kids don't run the house, though, right?
Well,
they're grown now.
You're gonna get me on that one. Let me ask you a question. Right. Okay, I want to move on to you explaining the structure of the State Black Chamber and your affiliates. But before I get there, I want to just say this, that I've attended several state conventions with you under Governor Rauner. He was the only elected official, and I'm an independent. I am an independent voter. I'll vote for anyone who has my interest at heart. Here's what I heard him say. I've heard no other politician say. Not that he did a good job at it, but at least he said it publicly. And this, I think he had this on the agenda. Didn't know how to get it done. He said, "Judge me on how well African Americans do under my administration." I heard him say that more than once. And I've yet to hear a Democrat say that, or an independent.
Yeah. Well, I think I'll kind of rephrase. He said, "Judge me how well Black business do under my administration." And he was clear that he believed that if Black business did better, that would be an indication of how his administration was doing overall. Okay. And like I said, it was a comment that we had never heard a governor make. So obviously we were intrigued by the comment in and of itself, quite frankly.
Absolutely. Let me ask you a question. Explain the structure. How is the Illinois State Black Chamber organized? What's the organizational structure?
Well, our structure is, Lee, that right now we have about 28 board members who serve on our board. And
how do you select board members?
Pardon me?
How do you select board members?
We look at the best and the brightest. And people recommend people to come to the board because they have a certain degree of expertise. You could make a nomination for someone on the board. I could make a nomination. And if we think that person fits it and they have a particular area of expertise that's helpful to the board, then we just want talented people on our board. And then our board then reaches out to the party, have a conversation, make sure they understand what's important to us. And then if everything meets what we do, then we basically ask them to serve on or give them an opportunity to serve on the board for 2 years. And that time can be extended for as long as they continue, as long as they add value to the board.
Give me the name of some of your board members and what do they do? Are they all businessmen, educators,
Yeah,
clergy?
yeah, but virtually everybody on our board are business people. So you can have a person like AGB, John Griffin, who owns the largest security company in the Black security company in the United States. John Griffin, AGB, Investigative Services. We have people like NOSA, Boa Construction, one of the most successful Black contractors who head up our construction committee. We have people like Joyce Johnson, who is Anchor Staffing, one of the great staffing companies. We have Stephanie Hickman, an engineer, a Black engineering firm who chairs our energy committee. So we have a lot of very, very talented people, the Michael Suttons of the world, who runs a great engineering company. And the list goes on and on. And if people want to go to our website and hit ilbcc.org, you can go and just hit board members. You'll see that 85% plus of our members who serve on our boards are presidents, CEOs, are presidents of their own company. And then, so our structure is such that, like any other organization, we have the president, the chairman, we have our board, and then we have our staff, but we also have our regional VPs, which is real important because our regional VPs give us a um, feet on the feet on the ground and in different areas where, because you can't be in every place at one time, no matter what you think. And so it's our job, when the regional VPs that are appointed by myself, by the president, and those regional VPs basically um, have the role and responsibility of that particular region to reach out, to talk. And if there's going to be a new chamber in that region, then that's really going to be the part of the regional VP to kind of examine who's going to be in leadership, make sure they understand what's expected of them, and then give them the support that they need to have in order to be a successful chamber.
Okay.
So that's the role of the regional VPs. That's some of the role of the regional VP, you might say.
Okay, Larry, some accomplishments. What can you hang your hat on as some of the major accomplishments the Illinois State Black Chamber, along with its affiliates, have made?
Well, I would dare say, Lee, there's probably been very few organizations who have done more for Black business than the Illinois State Black Chamber of Commerce in creating multi-millionaires and million dollar contracts that we have impacted. One of the things I think is important is that, one, we were the catalyst, in my opinion, for the sheltered market. We worked with the past governor to get the sheltered market done because we came to him and asked him to get it done, and he said he would do it. And the executive order was put out, and the sheltered market became. Other than that, the sheltered market was just something we talked about, but eventually we got the sheltered market where where it got the attention it deserved to get, and hopefully under this administration and future administrations, we will see people take more advantage of the sheltered market and use it as a tool to help, um, improve the lack of diversity within procurement. And, so that's really kind of important. I think the key to us winning from a strategy point of view is that we have to be honest. But you worked at IDOT for a long time, and we were one of the best EEO officers in the state. And I don't say that lightly because I think you can point to the things that you did as EEO officers were for the first time in history that I'm aware of. And I've been working with IDOT for a long time, so I'm pretty aware that this is not just something I'm making up, it's a fact. But normally the general contractors basically
A minute. Just give me
had to run the house.
give me for a minute. My name is Lee Coleman. I approve of that advertisement. Go ahead.
They kind of ruled the general contract ruled the roost, and they would do pretty much what they wanted to do. And for the first time that I'm aware of, that you gave some contractors failing grades, grades that they deserved. It wasn't like you gave them a failing grade just because. You gave them a failing grade because they were not achieving the goals and objectives, and you did the right thing. But normally that never happens because no one has the guts and the courage to do their job. You did your job. It didn't make you the most popular guy, but it did make you the most respected guy in the industry. And so you fought for equity and fairness. You were unapologetic about it. I remember being in the meeting with the leaders of IDOT, and we had some very intense conversations about issues, and it got heated. And we walked out of the meeting, and I walked out of the meeting. You were working for IDOT at the same time, and I look out, you walking out of the meeting with me. IDOT is sitting in the meeting, you walking out of the meeting with me. And I had to admire that. It takes an enormous amount of guts, or enormous amount of being a millionaire. Now, if you were a billionaire, I'd understood that, but you weren't a billionaire. You were just a guy who believed in the community. And because of that, we gave you the Dr. Arthur Fletcher Award, one of the most prestigious awards we give. We gave that to you not because you were a member of the organization, but I saw the work that you did. I saw the passion and commitment that you had for your people. And that was something that had to be honored at the highest level. So we gave you the award because you deserved it.
So my
And you
manifest right now, and this is one of the I play sports, and I got awards in sports. That's one of the greatest I've received thus far, and I really appreciate that. Let me ask you a question, Larry. We've got some, I don't want to use the word imposters, but we've got some people who have tried to duplicate your organization, maybe 2 or 3, and some have done it by unscrupulous means. Let's talk about how do you distinguish your chamber from the Black Chamber of Illinois? Another one's called it. There's 3 or 4 different ones out there. Name them for me.
Okay, one's called the Black Chamber of Illinois, one called the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce, and the other one's called the Illinois Black Chamber of Commerce of Industry. So we have a number of people who want to be like us, but the real reality of it is that you have to do something, and you have to have some standing. We've been fighting on behalf of Black business and Black people for over 20-something years with a proven track record of fighting policies, of stopping procurements, of putting policies in place that help Black businesses, of bringing talented people in, and just having a positive impact. And
holding the union's foot to the fire too, because I think Black people automatically, and it's almost universal that Black people think that unions are fair. They are good. It's good to have a union. But at the same time, to be totally honest, in Illinois, we all know there's some disparities in terms of who should be an apprentice and a journeyman in certain trades in this state. So there was some things that you did to kind of like slow that down. But Black people, please do not think that we're against unions, but unions have to own up to what they're supposed to do, and their organizations under the U.S. Labor Department that tend attempts to hold their feet to the fire when there's complaints made, but they're sorely lacking in enforcing those rules, and we have to be a little bit more aggressive toward making them do that. But like, for instance, the PLA, Project Labor Agreements, a lot of Black people assume that those are good things because the whole project is entirely union. But guess what?
Yes.
Good numbers in the union, Black man and woman, are very low.
Oh, absolutely. It's god awful, quite frankly. If you took a look at the real numbers and just think about it, under the current Supreme Court ruling, it's considered to be unconstitutional to have a set aside. Well, a PLA is a fundamental set aside for unions, quite frankly. The problem is that I wouldn't have a problem with unions if they would let us in and our numbers were reflective of our demographics, but it's not.
But there's a correction. There's a correction on set asides and quotas. under the CFR, the Code of Federal Regulations, it says that you can't have set-asides of quotas unless you prove that there is egregious discrimination.
Yep.
That's,
and it's narrowly tailored and all the other.
right.
So
That's the
we are
disparity study.
students of that.
And that's the disparity study. So based on what we know, there should be some set-asides and some quotas in the state of Illinois on construction projects. That's something we need to really take a look at. And the law is on our side.
Well, you know, one of the things, I'm glad you brought it up because, you know, we passed Marty Sandoval, who has, you know, has passed away, and Marty Sandoval, who was Hispanic legislator, led the charge in terms of getting the bill passed for the gas tax, okay? The motor fuel tax or the gas tax. So you're paying 23 cents or 22 cents a gallon more for gas when you put gas in your tank. For every gallon of gas, you pay 22 cents more because that funds the capital budget. But funds capital budget for the schools, highway infrastructure, and a lot of other maintenance that go on. But Black people are contributing to it. Anytime you pay for gas. So if you pay for gas, you're paying for infrastructure and you're paying for the capital budget. $45 billion capital budget is funded. They know they needed repairs. It was a good thing to do. They needed repairs, but in order they need, you know, it's one thing to need the repairs, another thing to pay for the repairs, Lee. And you being an ex-city manager, you know that you're going to have a wish list, but if you can't fund it, you can't finance it, you can't do it. Mm-hmm. And so they found a way to finance it by adding 22 cents more on our gas in order to fund the capital budget. The problem is, Lee, is that when you take a look at IDOT and you take a look at other organizations, and this responsibility falls on the head of the governor and on the Secretary of Transportation. The number for Black people have gone down dramatically. We are contributing, but we're not participating. And we ought to be outraged and incensed by the lack of participation when we have more than enough qualified companies that can participate. They're taking our money, but we're not getting the opportunities. And there's no justification for it. And if we don't stand up and say something, it will continue as is. If we didn't stand up, if Rosie Parks didn't stand up and say, I'm just not going to the back of the bus, we would still be at the back of the bus. America is a country that was built on rebellion, quite frankly. It was built on the fact that, you know, the Boston Tea Party was taxation without representation. Black people have to stop being scared and start demanding a seat at the table. And we always say, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu. Absolutely. And so we must demand a seat at the table. We must do our homework, and we must be strong advocates for Black participation.
So let me ask you this. You're absolutely right. So here's what I'm looking at. Okay, you have the oldest and the largest Black trade organization in the state of Illinois. We've got a few new organizations. You know, there's a lot of speculation that these groups are somewhat complicit in keeping your organization at odds with government officials, because now if you're going to be dogging the system, making sure it works right, I've seen that the system, the oppressors, they've always found a way to get that other group out there that will come and give you competition, because if you're hardline, which you should be, then they're going to take the other road and they're going to try to fund that organization as opposed to funding your organization to help make things happen. And you have adversarial relationships. So that's how I see these other chambers. Tell me if I'm wrong, because they all basically, most of the members and leaders in those organizations came right out of your rib.
Yeah, they did. And it's always, we have to understand that those who are in power, who never wanted Black people to be treated fairly, have a vested interest in dividing and conquering. You know, those are just facts. You know, whether we want to admit it or not, in America, there was a systematic strategy to keep Black people oppressed and demoralized and keep money out of their hands. I mean, it was a system. It was designed to do exactly what it did. And divide and conquer is the first part of a strategy. You know, if
they're fairly new, they'll have the track record or the organizational strength that you have. And I'm understanding that these organizations are getting, you know, grants and things that you can't get, that puts you in direct
Yeah.
competition with them, even though your track record is greater because of the longevity and the proven success. Now
Yeah.
you've got these newcomers coming along, even
Well,
duplicating your name to a certain degree, confusing the whole thing with reference to.
again, we have to be, I got to be very proud of one thing, Lee. It's like Dr. Fletcher, the father of affirmative action, says, like, he said, they ain't bothering nobody who ain't doing nothing. The beautiful thing is that when they are working hard at you, means that you're on the right track, that you're relevant. If all of a sudden ain't nobody mad at you, then you just basically going along. And if going along was good for Black people, then we can go along. But as long as we have people like the George Floyds and the lack of economic participation, we got no time to go along to get along.
Okay.
We have time to fight for a new generation of young Black kids. And I respect Black Lives Matter, because Black lives do matter. It mattered in the votes when it comes to getting votes from us. It matters. So if it matters for our votes, it ought to matter for us getting something. And equity and fairness ought to be a mandate. That's this whole concept of more perfect union.
Okay, so how are you gonna deal with those other chambers? Their competition in a sense. How do you deal with that? Knowing that you are the oldest, knowing that your name is being used
Well,
on purpose to confuse the whole situation, knowing that political leaders who acquiesce towards, giving a pass, a group that would give them the politicians a pass with reference to doing what they should do with reference to the Black community. How do you handle that? You've got 3 or 4 different organizations out there biting at your tail. How do you handle that?
well, it's like I was playing cards with my sister, and her husband made a comment that was absolutely, and I like him, but I didn't know he was that wise. And I was trying to intimidate my sister because I had the big joker. And every time she get ready to play something, I flash the joker at her to intimidate her. It's a part of spades. It's what we do in spades. And he made a comment. He says, it don't matter what Larry does, because he know I was getting it. He said, it don't matter what Larry does. Only thing matters is what you do.
Mm-hmm.
So it don't matter what they do, Lee. What matters is what we do. If we help Black businesses, we make sure our voices are strong, we stay relevant and fighting for the right things, the market will determine who's real and who's not real.
Okay.
And I think no matter what anybody tries to do, that we're the real deal Holyfield. It speaks for itself.
Okay. Hey, I got a question. The Illinois Black Caucus, and you've always had a good relationship with them, and your political action committee, has always been, your PAC group has always been generous to a lot of the members, and the majority of them are Democrats. So what is your relationship with the Illinois Black Caucus?
Well, I think that relationship is strained somewhat. I think we're working on making it better. I think
What made it strained, Larry? How did it get strained?
Well,
because you had a great relationship with those guys before. I was a witness to it.
Well, I think it might have been some mistakes on both sides of the fence. I think, when we were really working with the Black Caucus, there was a lot of things that just didn't happen unless they talked to us, okay? Because they trusted the chamber on the business side, people like Art Turner and others, Senator Claiborne, they relied upon us because they really wanted to know what the business community thought. It's like the CARES Act. If you go out and you issue the first line of CARES Act, no matter how well intended, it didn't get to Black people. So they didn't have enough people who understood the gig economy sitting at the table. And that's why it was an oversight, and it didn't do very well for Black people,
And
so
also,
you gotta have.
Larry, if you're the business organization, to me, that's a great marriage. You have the legislators who do what they do in certain arenas. And if you're the business people, you should be considered the business professionals. And look like to me, that should be a good marriage, that if there's an issue about business as it relates to the Black community, you should be that organization that they should go to. For instance, like IDOT, we know a lot of those legislators want to help, but they don't understand IDOT. But you got individuals on your team that have great expertise in IDOT or in other areas, IT and things like that. So it look like that would be a good marriage.
It is. If you, and I give this example, Lee, that I want the audience to really listen to. If you're trying to win the championship and you got Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and even Larry Bird, and they're in their prime, and you got them on the bench, you ain't trying to win the championship. That's all I can tell you.
Mhm.
If you get that type of talent and you don't have them in the game, you're not trying to win the championship. So when people talk about the tollway and IDOT and the areas, now we don't have expertise in everything, but most people know that we have been meeting. We know the rules of the Federal Highway Administration better than legislators know, quite frankly. And we should be working together. You know, it should be a call to us in terms of getting our input. When you're talking about the sheltered market, well, the sheltered market was driven largely by Charlotte Roberts, who turned me onto it, and I
Who
became
is
one
Charlotte
of the
Roberts?
leading talents.
Who's Charlotte Roberts?
Charlotte Roberts is the head of diversity for the University of Illinois, but she was also the head of strategic sourcing for Cook County and then the head of strategic sourcing for CMS.
And
So
guess
she
what?
had a loan procurement background
Guess what?
behind it.
She's from East St. Louis, Illinois.
Absolutely. Her father is an icon, and he just recently passed away. I learned a lot about um, him just after he passed away. I knew he was I didn't know how big he was. Sammy Davis Jr. performed at his club. He had one of the biggest nightclubs in the whole country. He had taxi. He owned hotels. And in the 1950s, man, it was incredible in terms of what he. So it tells me a lot about Charlotte, why she's such a tigeress. She got it honestly from her father, you know, of not taking no for an answer. So, you know, it's so importantly for all of us to understand that when you want to talk about procurement and certain things, there are certain people who have expertise in it. And when you bring on policy, we're unequal to any other organization when it comes to policy. We know policy backwards and forward. We understand the disparity study and Adirondack and Croson, the Supreme Court cases that led to the thing. So we're enormous resources when it comes to understanding. We must, where there's discord and rivalry, we must bring into unity and harmony
How do
in
you
order for
get
us to succeed.
back with the Illinois State Black Caucus to try to remedy some of the problems that you may have with them with you?
Well, you know, I don't know if I don't have any problems with the caucus. I think there's sometimes you got to sit down and talk about where you're at and understand that we're fighting for the same things. And I think with leadership of Chris Welch in the House and Senator
Shut them for a meeting.
Black, yeah, Senator Belt, and we got to sit down and have honest conversation because sometimes people say things and it has no validity at all, but they've heard it and no one's talking to anyone. So my goal and my objective is that we're going to stay focused on what we do, helping Black businesses. We think like many things, like my father, he was a Baptist minister. He said, Larry, everything will run its course, be patient. And so I believe that if we do what we need to do, Lee, and we stay focused on the things that matter, and that we stay focused on helping Black businesses and writing solid policies. We're working in Washington, D.C. And around the country, pushing for more Blacks on corporate boards, more corporations spending more money with African American businesses.
Which the governor promised us in a meeting that I attended with you in May of 2019. He promised that there would be a Black on each corporate board on that Friday. Come Monday, everything changed. And they started talking about the protective groups, which is about 7 people, but who's the most disparaged group? African Americans. And here's what the governor said to us in that meeting, Larry. I have video and I have photos and I have a vivid memory. He said that we need to call those people out. They need a report card, and we need to let the citizens know what grade they get with reference to how well they perform on the thing that they know we need and what they've promised. So we've got some grading to do. We've got a few test papers back. Now we have to go through and grade them.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I think that we must demand. Power concedes nothing without a demand. We cannot be afraid to stand up because our babies' lives are at risk. If we don't stand up and fight for them, then we're going to lose them in the streets, and their parents will be the streets, and their destination will be prison and death.
And the thing about
And we
that,
can't afford that.
we'll go to another topic real quickly. We're about to ready to wrap up. You know, there's so much disparaged treatment with reference to African Americans in the economic arena, social justice. You know, you look at the thing at the Capitol where they're letting these insurrectionists, people who committed sedition, getting grown people being released to their parents. One lady released to go on vacation in Mexico. One guy said today, the Shama, the guy with the horns, he said that police officers just let us walk in and just let us walk out. Compare that picture to when Black Lives Matter marched down the street in that same city a few months before. So we got something to do, Black people. We've got to get up off of it because they're not going to give us anything. We're going to have to demand it. We've got to use every law that's applicable, and we're going to have new laws created. When it comes to police reform, if your legislators or your elected officials are not talking about qualified immunity, don't even talk about police reform. If qualified immunity is not on the table. And some states just did. I think it was Colorado. They did institute, they got rid of qualified immunity. I think it was Colorado, I'm not sure. But anyway, Larry, what effects do you think COVID has had on businesses? I know you've had a few workshops. We're going to get into your upcoming events and some of the other things you've been involved in. But let's talk about the effects of COVID briefly on Black businesses.
Well, let me say that before COVID, Black businesses were struggling. You know, we're absolutely struggling. When COVID hit, it made the struggle even more devastating. That businesses who were surviving on a lifeline, we've lost somewhere close to 30 to 40% of small businesses in our communities. And, you know, and it was devastating. You know, I was just on a national forum with the head of the Small Business Roundtable, the Inspector General for the United States of America, Richard Dimmler, and Sandra. I can't remember Sandra's last name, and you know, and we had a very candid conversation about the pandemic and the relief funds, which they have responsibly over at the United States level, and we had an honest conversation about, you know, the CARES Act and the PPP and the disaster loans and the PPE, all the things that, and it was a candid conversation that will be on their website and be displayed and talked about throughout the whole country. But we had a chance to give our input, and we talked about some of the inherent problems. Is that, you know, you have to have racially sensitive advertising. When COVID hit, we were most adversely impacted by it. But why? Because of the healthcare disparities. The reason Black people are dying at a much higher rate is because of the health deserts. Because we have a system of sick care, not preventive care. And preventive care is a lot less expensive than sick care. But because there's so much money in sick care and it's an industry, then we tend not to take a look at preventive care. But when those things happen, you couple that with businesses' credit being hurt because they couldn't pay their mortgage, businesses not getting money from the PPE. You had a devastating impact upon Black businesses in a way that we probably won't see the real impact of it, Lee, until later on. And the gig economy, you know, if you didn't have a payroll, then you couldn't participate in the Paycheck Protection Program. And a lot of gig economies, our businesses, simply didn't have. You know, they were paying for their business with their family money and resources, and they wouldn't take money out of the business. They were subsidizing. They were still adding a value to our community and should have been protected. But since we were not at the table, at the level we should have been at the table, then the legislation and the things we put in place did not include them. And I think it's time for us to make sure our voices are heard loud and clear in reference to those issues, and make sure that they never get left out again, because they are businesses. They're still providing a service to our communities and in a way that big companies aren't providing a service. And it don't make them less important, because the economic engine of America is small business. And let me just point this other place out. When SBA talks about small business, Lee, they talk about companies of 500 and under, okay? Now, if you talk about a company, if we have a Black company in our community that's employs 400 people, we don't consider that small business. We consider that a very, very, very successful business. 90% of our businesses are mom and pop businesses, 90%. 90%. We got to scale up and grow our businesses in a way that build more that they employ more people and they're scaling up and growing their business. That's got to be a mandate. We got to take a look at credit enhancements because there's a lot of issues of credit. And I think we got a pandemic when it comes to derogatory credit. And we need to have a game plan to address those issues by doing credit enhancement strategies, businesses run by Black, but it's got to be business run by Black, not by white people, because the statistical data shows us, even in healthcare, when Black people provide healthcare treatment for Black people, the outcome is far more successful. So it has to be culturally sensitive, and it has to use Black media, like your media front, to tell our story, because you have credibility, and mainstream media don't have the same degree of credibility.
Okay, Larry, I want to get into it too deep, but you got some things coming up. We're going to talk about that next week. But just briefly, talk about some of the things that you've got in the can that's going to be manifesting itself in the month of February.
Well, this month, Lee, we have a theme for Black History Month called Celebrating Black History to Strengthening Black Businesses. We will have the universities like Western University of Illinois, Northeastern Illinois University, Chicago State, Governor State, a bunch of universities and junior colleges will be participating. We estimate we'll probably have somewhere close to 30 to 40 universities and junior college will be participating. And this is a matchmaking session where they will have the procurement people who buy goods and services front and center. And we will introduce top Black companies, or just companies who want an opportunity to talk to the people in purchasing to make sure they know who they are, because we hear a lot of times when you go and talk to people, well, we can't find them. Well, maybe they're not looking hard enough, but our job is to take that excuse from them. So when we introduce these companies, that gives these university and junior colleges, they don't have a path. They can't say they don't know them because we introduced them to them. So we have to make sure that those colleges and institutions that train our kids and we pay out money for, that they are contributing back to Black businesses at the same time. So that's going to be a very powerful event that will allow us an opportunity to put people with other people to help grow and build capacity.
Recently, Larry, you also had a Zoom conference meeting with several of your members and other people with reference to the CPOs of major agencies in the state of Illinois. Talk about that for a minute.
Well, we have 4 major agencies that were created, and those agencies were IDOT had Bill Grunlow, Capital Building Board had Art Moore, he's a CPO for capital development. Then we had Ellen Daly, who's a general services. And then you had John Donato, who was over higher education. And those were the 3 CPO. We had a very candid conversation because the CPOs have the ultimate responsibility about procurement, making sure there's a fair and transparent procurement from beginning to end. And they can stop any procurement at any point in time if they believe that procurement was not procured in the proper way. And so we're trying to get them to be more engaged when it comes to stopping procurements that have no goals on it, or is not having a sheltered market or something else. So we're working with them to make sure they hear our voices. Senator Claiborne was a part of that conversation. So we're in the face of people who make decisions that can make better decisions. And I believe that's our role and response. I think that's what separates us from everyone else. When we walk into a meeting, we serve Black businesses, Lee, and we serve it. And I'm proud that I get an opportunity to work on behalf of Black businesses throughout the whole United States of America, to make sure that their voices are heard, that what we call voter suppression, we have procurement suppression. And we want to make sure that just everybody should have a right to exercise their vote. Every business should have a right to participate in the American economy. Those who are ready, willing, and able, we should remove the barriers and make sure that everyone gets a chance to participate. That's our goal and objective. And we ain't stepping back from that, no matter what anyone says. That's our mission, and we believe in it.
Okay, Larry, you've got a proven track record for over 20-something years in that area. So that's LeezFeed for tonight. And we'll be back next week, Larry, to discuss some other matters that are important to the Black community. So we're going to be doing this very often with you. And we appreciate you as a leader. And thank you for taking out the time to talk to us this evening. That's LeezFeed for the night, and we'll see you later. Larry Ivory.
Take care, Lee.
Okay.
Bye-bye.